Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the 400th episode of The Michigan Man. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. It's hard to believe we are in our 8th year of the show and still waiting for our first Big Ten championship. When we started the show back in January of 2010, I thought we were on the verge of a new and exciting era of Michigan football with Rich Rodriguez. We know how that turned out. Then Brady came back from San Diego State, and we thought, yes, someone that gets how it's supposed to be done here in Ann Arbor. And we were disappointed again. There was so much turmoil on and off the field during those years. Then we hit a home run and brought Jim Harbaugh back home. Finally, we had the guy who would get us back on track and return Michigan football to what we think, anyway, is our rightful place at the top of the Big Ten and battling for a spot in the playoffs. I think all of that is still coming. Maybe not as fast as some of you, the faithful, would like, though. So through 8 years and 400 episodes, I can say this with certainty. There has never been a dull moment. There sure won't be this week. Beat writer Nick Baumgardner from the Detroit Free Press will join us in just a minute with his take on Saturday's IU nail-biter, and then discuss this Saturday night's game at Beaver Stadium against number 2 Penn State. Before Nick joins us, my view from Section 17 this week. I can honestly say that I have not had a relaxing moment watching Michigan football this year, whether in my seat in Section 17 or on TV. Through 6 weeks, I have been a nervous wreck watching this team, a drenched nervous wreck at the Michigan State game. The closest I come to relaxing is when we are on defense. This D is so good I'm shocked when the opposition strings together a drive or busts a big run. When we have the ball, Murphy's Law seems to be in full effect. I feel like I should be wearing a mouth guard when we have the ball. I just grind my teeth watching this offense as it seems to struggle with issues on seemingly every play. Now, I know that's an exaggeration, but it does feel that way. Now we pack our bags and head to Happy Valley for a national TV game at night against the number 2 team in the country, one that we hammered in the Big House last year, and they have gone 15-1 since that game. I know anything is possible. That's why they play the game. But I can't be the only one that has bad vibes about this one. Do I think we can win? Yes. How do we win? By running the ball down their throats, with John O'Korn taking what the defense gives him in the passing game, and by keeping the penalties to a minimum. The defense will do their part to give us a chance. Okay, we haven't seen all of that happen in a game this year, but it has to on Saturday night if we want to be in a position to win or keep the game close. This is a young team, and sooner or later they will turn the corner. Let's hope the turn begins this Saturday night in Happy Valley. Nick Baumgardner liked the game plan on Saturday and thinks we have to stay committed to the running game, stop the penalties, and just let the defense do its thing. He joins us next here on our Game Day segment on The Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Back with us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week to take a look back at the overtime game in Bloomington and, of course, look ahead to a trip to number 2, Penn State. Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from the Detroit Free Press. Great to have you back with us, Nick.
Always good to be with you, Mike.
Well, Nick, let's get right to the offense and talk about that. Aside from the penalties on Saturday, and we'll talk about that in a minute or two, it looks like Jim and staff have decided, hat-on-hat blocking, dives, counters, some gap stuff, and let Karan and the running backs find their way is what works best. And that's really basic. But I think of everything we've seen so far this season, that might be the ticket.
Yeah, I have to give them, give credit where it's due. I mean, I was pretty rough on them last week with everything I wrote in terms of their game plan against Michigan State, and really their game plans through the first 5 weeks of the season. I didn't understand them with a younger football team, but last week I really did think there was issues obviously, but I thought that game plan made more sense than anything they've done all year in terms of they got like we said, they got back, like you just mentioned, they got back to something that they do pretty well, and that is their gap stuff, which is, like you said, the powers, the counters, the ISOs, blasts and dives, those types of things. The stuff that they've always sort of had as foundation level runs in this offense. You can sprinkle in zone, you can sprinkle in some other things, but those things need to be your kind of counter. Those things need to be your off-speed pitch or whatever you want to call it. The complement to your fastball, so to speak. And that hadn't been the case this season. But we saw it there Saturday where they went with what was working, and they stuck with a guy who runs that stuff, Karan Higdon, better than anybody else on the team, and it worked. I mean, it was 271 on the ground against the defense. And I know that people like to maybe lump Indiana into this category of terrible defense, a terrible defense because that's what they were for so long. But they've improved over the past few years, especially against the run. I mean, they kept Saquon Barkley to under 60 yards a couple weeks ago. So 271 on the ground, 200 for Higdon. That's what they needed to do. There was a lot of other issues with that game plan, or that game rather. But I should say that the game plan itself made sense to me. And I think it was enough. And for that week, it was enough for a win, and they move on.
Any question in your mind Karan Higdon should be the featured back moving forward?
Doesn't seem like it. I mean, it seems like, it seems like, if you can remember back to last year when he kind of emerged as a option, he did so by running those sets. He was a great kind of relief guy for Davion Smith, and that he's their most decisive runner, and he's the fastest through the hole. I mean, he's a guy who in those types of downhill runs, you're looking for a guy who knows where he's going, who can make one cut, put the shoulder down, and go, and not screw around, not bounce anything in the backfield, not try to reverse field, not try to wait and pick and find. He's not a zone runner. I think Ty Isaac is maybe more of a zone runner, and Evans, I think, is still trying to find out what he is. But Karan Higdon is absolutely a downhill guy, and if you're going to lean on the powers and counters and things like that, I think he's your best bet. So. The other guys are going to still get carries, and I'd like to actually see more of. And it's funny because I've gotten more questions about this guy all season, Kareem Walker. I'd argue that maybe you need to see more of him because that he only had one run, but it was pretty impressive. I thought it was a nice little power run to the outside. So I would, even if you're going to lean more on this heavy stuff, I think he could give you something. So certainly more of Higdon, and then maybe even see what Kareem Walker could give you, but. I would certainly buy into what you're doing, what you did last week, and use that as your anchor and sort of move forward from there.
Well, and clearly the game plan was to take pressure off of John O'Korn. Your thoughts on his play, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, after the game, he and Harbaugh both had kind of brushed off sort of the really low passing numbers, basically, saying, well, the running game worked, so we didn't need to pass. And it's like, well, I mean, that's fair on some level. But you couldn't have the pass because it wasn't there. I mean, you did it out of necessity because there was nothing was working. The combination of what they were trying to do and then what they tried to ask. They didn't ask much of John O'Korn. They basically asked him to do a handful of things, and he didn't deliver on any of them. And that's really the issue here. It's not that he didn't go out there and light Indiana up for 300 yards. They weren't asking him to do that. They were asking John O'Korn to probably be 14 of 20 for about 150 yards and with a couple of chunk plays, and he didn't get it done. I mean, there was one over the top to Peoples-Jones that was wide open. That was a touchdown that he overthrew. There was one where Zach Gentry had broke free later in the game on a deep shot that he just completely missed him and didn't even look at him. And there was a couple other spots here and there where the throws were either he or a receiver weren't on the same page, or it just wasn't there. You know, they weren't asking him to do a ton, but whatever they did ask him to do, he couldn't deliver on. And that's sort of the formula. If they can get that fixed, where if you say, okay, John O'Corn, we're going to need you to make like 3 or 4 really nice throws a game to really keep people honest. That's all we need you to do, and we can lean on our defense and grind out a game. Then they can win some games, and they can make things difficult on a lot of people they play. But if he can't make those throws in those moments, and if he can't do what's there when they're open to sort of keep people honest, then it's a struggle. And that's what we saw on Saturday, and that's why it was more difficult than it needed to be. If he makes a couple of those shots that we just mentioned, this is probably a blowout. And you know, they keep Indiana honest. They're on their heels a little bit, and he's just doing just enough. It's the old Trent Dilfer method, right? What the Ravens did the one year and way back when, where it was pound the football, your quarterback makes just enough throws to keep people honest, and defense dominates somebody, and you win more than you lose. And that's what the recipe has to be. And if O'Corn can play his part, they can be fine. But that's the big question right now.
Well, I thought it was interesting during the game and last week, Brock Heward, who did the game, he was the color analyst for ABC. Last week on his podcast and then during the game, he did a very illustrative look at what John O'Corn is seeing, because he said he wanted to back up and see in that Michigan State game, what was John O'Corn looking at? And he said, throw out the debate, should we have been throwing in the monsoon? He said he just wanted to see what John was or wasn't seeing. And he said, in a classic pro-style offense, you have your progressions. And he said there's usually 3 progressions in 3 seconds, which sounds amazing. But he said in the NFL, it can be 5 and 6. But he said John was locked onto those downfield receivers on just about every attempt against the Spartans. And what was really amazing is he rolled the tape. He said, let's look at these 12 passes that he threw in the third quarter. And he said 7 of those, the number 2 and the number 3 progressions, mid-range and then underneath, were wide open. On 5 of them, Michigan State had no one in the area. And what Brock's point was, he said, I'm sure Jim Harbaugh and staff are trying to get John to realize that, look downfield. If it's not there, you throw underneath, you're going to chunk up 10, 15, 20 yards or more. Teams aren't accounting for these mid-range and underneath receivers right now. And he went back then in the Indiana game and said, see, they're not even covering it. They're just doubling on the outside. They're saying, go ahead, beat us down the field. And he said, we talk about our young receivers aren't getting separation. He said, you know what? That's a way to create separation for them. If John can just start dumping the ball underneath more, you're going to make separation on the outside for your young guys.
Yeah, that's how you scheme it. I mean, and they're starting to scheme some stuff that should be there. But like you say, your quarterback has to do the bare minimum, and that's really what this is. You have got to deliver the football to someone that has a chance to make a play, and that's what this has to be. I think that they got away from that earlier this season, and for whatever reason, and whether that be they're coaching kids up to try to take these deep shots or whatever it is. But you could even watch John O'Corn. I mean, it's funny. I think it was Al Borges years ago used to say Michigan quarterbacks are the easiest to read their eyes on film because the wings on their helmet are always pointing where you can see where they're looking. There's no hiding. You know where they're looking, so you can watch John O'Corn drop back and you can see where his eyes are. And on more often than not, it's on the vertical. And when the vertical's not there, it's the feet start bouncing and he rolls out of the pocket and he runs around, or the play's dead. And that's got to stop. I mean, when it's first read and it's first read's there, he's delivering the football, and it's more than fine. That's what we saw against Purdue, where every first read was wide open and he threw for 270. The last 2 weeks, the first reads have been covered, which is normal because that's just how defenses are. And he has not been able to check out of it. I mean, he has not been able to get through it and to see anything else, and that has been a huge issue. And that's why they look like they're playing with one hand tied behind their back, because if he's not able to hit a couple of throws that are there to keep people honest, it is brutal. I mean, and even at the end of the game, credit Michigan's offensive line, because they were making things happen in the second half against an 8-man front, because Indiana knew absolutely that Michigan couldn't throw the football, and they still ran the football for 2 touchdowns, including 2 chunk plays there in the second half. And, people want to criticize him for not getting a first down at the end of the game there. Well, that's a 9-10 man front, because they knew, everyone in the building knew that there was no way John O'Korn was throwing the football. It was that bad. So, I credit Michigan's offensive line for having a nice game on the ground. I thought they protected him much better. I don't think he can completely complain about that. He's got to be better. And it's his offense. That's the other thing I'd say, is if anyone who's in the building, they watch the sideline and they watch Brandon Peters and Dylan McCaffrey on the sideline, that wasn't even an option. Michigan is so clearly not ready to put either of those guys in a football game right now. It is John O'Korn's team. He's got to figure it out, and it's got to be him moving forward, or at least until if Spate can get healthy and come back. But right now, it's all John O'Korn, and he's got to do it.
Well, the penalty thing on Saturday, Nick, was just ridiculous. I was just grinding my teeth watching that. I'm not even sure where you start with that. Discipline, youth. It doesn't matter. When you have the offense like we have, you can't overcome that. I mean, that has got to get fixed fast.
Yeah, that was the unique part, was there was no 1 or 2 groups or whatever to blame. It was really on everybody. I mean, it was, even special teams had 3 or 4 penalties, which is really rare. Holding on sportsmanlike. You saw 3 offsides from the defense. You saw, holds, pass interference, and not a lot of things that were very, that you could argue. I mean, they were all pretty clear calls, and that was the problem. Receivers holding, receivers hitting after the play. I mean, it was just a snowball effect of, all of a sudden everything you've maybe been getting away with, you're caught red-handed doing, and it's just 11 in the first half. I mean, that's out of control. The first quarter was, I think, 6, and the first half overall was 11. That's the thing where I look back at that game and say there's all the missed opportunities they had in the first half. That was 13-3 at halftime. That game should have easily been 20-23 nothing at halftime. If they had cut the penalties out, if they had finished drives properly without screwing themselves over with the penalties, and if they hadn't let Indiana basically walk down the field due to penalties and score on their final drive of the half with the kick. I mean, look how much different things are. If it's a team where, like you say, you can't afford mistakes, you can't afford to give anybody anything. If you can cut those down and play kind of mistake-free football, I mean, it's funny, but you look back to what Michigan State did 2 weeks ago. They just sat in there and said, "We need you to make one drive offense, and then let them screw up, let them screw everything up for 4 quarters, and you come out of there with a win." It's not like they played great football; they just didn't screw themselves over, and that's sort of how Michigan lean on your defense. And that's sort of how Michigan's going to have to do this. And the penalty 16, that's got to be cut in half and then cut in half again. I mean, they can't survive. Certainly this week at Penn State, there's no way. If they even have maybe 8, I don't know if they can survive it. So that's got to get fixed in all areas, and that's probably the bigger concern, is that it's everywhere. So a lot of work to do on a lot of spots for Michigan this week.
The defense got in on the penalty party, but they were just outstanding again. And, at the beginning of the season, we thought if there are any question marks on this defense, it's going to be in the secondary, especially the corners. But you have to like what you're seeing from Lavert Hill and the guys back there. Really good stuff right now.
Yeah, really coming along. You're not seeing any situations where they are just totally blown, botched to coverage, or somebody's just completely free. There was the one play down the sideline where the guy had stepped out of bounds there and come inside on Brandon Watson, where obviously the play was illegal, but maybe you'd have liked even in that moment, maybe you'd liked a little better coverage there. But, it wasn't like Brandon Watson was trailing the guy by 5 yards. He wasn't just completely run by or out of position. And then, Lavert Hill is turning into an outstanding football player. As we watch him, sort of like, people want to look back and remember Jordan Lewis's sophomore year, where you could see on a team that wasn't very good that year, Jordan was one of the bright spots that continued to get better each week. And you could see his play elevate. Well, Lavert Hill's playing on a really, really good defense, obviously. And you can notice him, he had 3 breakups against Michigan State, the one really athletic interception there against Indiana. Had the mistake. I mean, the interception that was wiped out due to pass interference, that was pass interference. It's a fair call. So he's still young and coming along, but getting there. And then David Long, too. I think David Long, you give him a lot of credit. He was a guy where they were really concerned about him back in spring and earlier this season if he was going to get it. And he looks like he's settling in nicely as well. So really good stuff from the defensive backfield all year long. I mean, nobody has thrown the football on this defense at all. And when you consider the fact that nobody can run it, that's why you're sitting in a situation where I think Indiana had 278 total yards with an overtime, and that was a season high for anyone against Michigan. No one has had more than 278, and most teams will take 278 and say that is outstanding football. That is as good as we can play. And for Michigan, that was technically their worst game on defense this year through 6. So they've been phenomenal all season long, no question about it. That's the part now where people are seeing if there are 1 or 2 mistakes, they get magnified because they just don't happen, and people freak out and say, "Well, what's wrong with the defense?" Well, they only made like 2 or 3 mistakes, guys. Calm down. It's just like it's more magnified now. But they're playing great, and they're playing good enough, no question, to give Michigan a chance in every game it has here. It's just a matter of, can your offense get through something without sabotaging it? And that's what we're going to have to find out.
You had a piece on the weekend ratings for ABC, ESPN. Michigan, Indiana, the ratings king, and that's a noon kickoff, beating primetime games. It's scary how much interest there still is in this program, Nick, and it gives you an idea how much pressure Jim Harbaugh and staff are under.
I think that's a good way of putting it. Like, I mean, that's it's because it's 2 things. And I've been covering Michigan for a long time, and I've seen this forever. It's 2 things. It's Michigan's fan base is really big. Obviously, we all know that. There's a lot of people everywhere that like Michigan football and they watch every Saturday, and that's part of the reason. But when Michigan looks like it's maybe on the ropes, and maybe they'll drop one, or maybe something's not going so well, everybody seems to drop what they're doing and tune in because they want to see it. And especially with Jim Harbaugh now as the coach, because there's a lot of people out there that want to see him stumble. And so, fair or not, that's what it is. Like I tweeted it yesterday. I said, something's changed, something stayed the same. And, the country loves watching Michigan football, and they hate watching Michigan football. That seems to be certainly well into the combination here, because like I say, a noon game against Indiana outdraws everything on all networks for the entire weekend. I mean, that makes no sense. But I think it was a combination of Michigan fans wanting to watch the game, and then a lot of people that want to watch Michigan lose. I saw a lot of Michigan State fans watching that thing, tweeting live through it. I saw a lot of Ohio State fans doing the same thing, and I saw a lot of casual observers everywhere else doing the same thing. So that's what the job is. That's what we used to talk about when Brady Hoke was the coach, and why it was too much for him, and it's too much for a lot of people. It's a lot. One mistake is blown up, and it's unfair. I mean, Michigan dropped in the polls. They lost the game, they fell. I mean, everyone framed that as Michigan survives a disaster. Michigan survives a meltdown. You see somebody else win a game by 3 later in the night, and it's a well-earned victory. I mean, that's just how it goes at this place, because everyone expects more. And I think that number, that rating, sort of illustrates some of that, and that's part of the deal.
With us here on our Game Day segment this week, taking a look back at the Indiana game, is Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from the Detroit Free Press. Nick, we know who's next. Game Day, national TV, under the lights. Penn State up to number 2 in this week's poll. And this one scares me, Nick. I've seen quite a bit of Penn State so far this year. They, of course, are good. And we blew their doors off in Ann Arbor last year. Not the perfect recipe for success. A struggling team against an angry, explosive Big Ten and national contender. I don't have good vibes about this one, Nick.
No, they're also coming off a bye. So, I mean, it's like there are no built-in advantages here for Michigan at all, if you look at it. Michigan's a double-digit underdog for the first time under Jim Harbaugh. I sort of expected that. Penn State, obviously we all know about Saquon Barkley. Everybody knows he's a fantastic football player. But really in this game, for me, Penn State's defense is the difference here, or at least it appears to be. In that, last year the defense was never great, but it seemed like they got better as the year went on, at least to where they were able to sort of hold the water and let their offense make big plays. I would give Michigan a chance to hang in this football game, because I think its defense can hang against anybody, if their offense can just find a way to to move the ball down the field and finish a drive twice. Just go get 2 touchdown drives and then take care of field position. And I think your defense is good enough to give you a chance. But if you can't do that, then it's going to be a long night, because it's, Barkley at some point is going to make you pay on something, whether you're playing it perfect or not. Because a lot of what Penn State does, because their offensive line is still really bad, and they're still putting up 450 yards a game, because Barkley can just run through 5 tacklers and bounce around the corner and run past everybody in the building. I mean, he's just that good. So he can do a lot of it on his own. I think McSorley, the quarterback, is so much better than he was when Michigan saw him last year. The whole team is, Penn State's 15-1 since that game here last year where they got blown out 48-10, whatever it was. McSorley has become more than just a drop back, heave it and pray quarterback. There's still some of that in the offense, but he's much more accurate with everything else. The offense seems to run more smooth now. And the defense is pressure heavy. It's just like Michigan. It's getting your opponent's backfield, get them off schedule, get sacks, tackles for loss, make them face long, third and long, long situations on third down. Michigan has been terrible on third down, even in third and short. So you have got to find a way to stay out of those bad spots, protect the football. You've got to, at some point, you're going to have to move the football on this defense and finish touchdown drives. That's it. And if you can't do it, you're going to lose the game. There's no other way around it. Michigan's offense has to play as perfect as it can. And even then, it's probably going to be a football game because Penn State's that good. And the environment is nasty. I mean, that's it. And all these freshmen, all these young guys, this is going to be the most intense thing they've ever seen by a mile. It's Penn State at night. Those people are insane. Game day's there, I think, for the first time since all this scandal stuff rocked the place. I think so. They're feeling pretty good about themselves. Not a great recipe for success this week for Michigan, but this is your pivot game where if you can find a way here, if you can find a way to get it done, then the outlook on everything changes, everything, and you move forward. And of course, you're never going to be able to take back that loss against Michigan State, but a win in this one would certainly be some pretty good mouthwash, I think, for a lot of people. With not only the job that this current team is doing, but with the job that Harbaugh and the whole staff are doing right now with the young football team.
Yeah, and I think after 6 weeks, Nick, to some degree, it is what it is. But this staff will. Yep. We're not going to go into Happy Valley conceding anything. Jim Harbaugh knows what he's working with, and I think Michigan's best chance after what we've seen through the last 6 weeks is, I don't know any other way to put it, but it's got to be caveman football. I mean, you can save a lot of the sexy NFL stuff for another time as these guys get older, but it's going to be we kick your butt or you kick ours. And in this high-tech era of offenses, I know that sounds simplistic, but I think if you're a young football team with good athletes, but not capable yet of maybe executing that pro-style offense where you need to be, you make it something this team can understand, and you just go in there and give it your best shot.
Yeah, if your quarterback can make the 4 to 5 throws a game that you're really asking him and saying, you have got to deliver here now. It's got to be something where you've got to make them pay here. We've schemed something up. The play, we know it's going to be open. We know it's going to be there. You have got to deliver the football. If he can do that, and your offensive line can continue to kind of crack some stuff on the ground, and you can grind it out and lean on your defense, you can win a lot of games still. But that's what it comes down to. John O'Korn has to be able to hit the handful of throws. Like you said, you mentioned that Brock Huard went over it or whoever else went over it. It comes down to 5 to 7 passes that are they're there, and you've got to deliver them. And if you can't do it, it's going to be a long night, and that's the situation. So to me, it all hinges on that. I mean, you can't ask him to do too much, and they didn't last week. They did 2 weeks ago. They didn't last week. They did not ask much of John O'Korn, and he did not deliver on anything. He's got to be better, period. I mean, he's a fifth-year senior. I understand he's a backup. I understand he was maybe even a third stringer at one point in this offense. Whatever. He's got to be better. It's his thing now. He came here. He told everybody how he was going to be better here. He told everybody how Houston made a mistake when they cut him loose. Well, here you go. Now's your chance. I mean, this is it right here. If you're John O'Korn, he's from Pennsylvania. He grew up there. This is his opportunity. It's now or never. I mean, you got to make it happen. So they're not asking him to light the world on fire. They're just asking him to be a player, to be somebody like something in the realm of what Jake Rudock was early when he was here before he took off, where it wasn't much, didn't need much, just need enough. And he's got to deliver it. If he can't, Michigan's in trouble. If he can, they've got a shot. To me, that's what it comes down to.
Well, last question for you, Nick. This is something you and I have talked about before the season. Expectations. Fans are never going to be realistic, especially when you've hauled into recruiting classes like we have in the last couple of years and lived through a very disappointing decade of Michigan football. And right now, it seems like the only comparison that matters to a lot of Michigan fans is what they're doing down south in Columbus. What do you say to fans that are beginning to, waver right now when it comes to this program and its direction?
I say to them, that their frustration is understandable. I think that's my best way I can say it. I think there's a lot of people who before the year had kind of asked me, like, is it fair for me to be frustrated? Like, is that fair? At this point, has he had enough time or whatever? And to me, I look at it on the overall. I think, if I look at it all the way back to like 2007, the start of the year where Michigan loses to Appalachian State and it becomes a national punching bag. Michigan fans, Mike, yourself included, have been through a lot, as much or more than anybody in America for more than a decade. And for them to voice frustration, I think, is more than fair. I mean, Michigan fans have been asked to just hang in there for another year, wait another minute, let's get to another signing day, let's get one more class in here. I mean, how many more times do they have to hear that before it's going to be enough's enough? So, I mean, they're not where Ohio State is. They weren't where Ohio State was last year. They weren't where Ohio State was in this offseason. So there's a lot of people who I think have spent some time listening to people that like to carry water and tell them exactly what they want to hear, and that's a bummer. But at the same time, I do understand their frustration. I really do. I mean, not to a frustration point of, I wrote this last week. There is no or else here. There is no win it or else. In the past, it was if you can't get it done, somebody's getting fired. I mean, Jim Harbaugh is not going to get fired. He's the guy. So that's what makes things even more interesting here, maybe more stressful for Michigan fans, is that you finally have your coach, and now it's time to see if he can really do it. And so there's some of it where, patience, of course, is probably needed because they are a young football team. They're not as good as maybe some people thought they would be. On a lot of levels, they're exactly what I thought they would be, but maybe a little worse on offense. I thought they'd be a little better than this, but at the same time, growing pains are what they are. But yeah, I do get the frustration. I think it's warranted. I think it's fair because Michigan fans have been asked to sit there and wait and be patient and everything else for 10, 12 years. And I know Jim Harbaugh hasn't been here for 10, 12 years, and maybe some of it's not fair on him, but whatever. I mean, if they're upset, there was 112, 13, 14,000 people standing in a monsoon all the way to the fourth quarter 2 weeks ago that did not leave. The people are loyal. They're there every week. If they're upset and they're frustrated, I think that's totally fair. And I think Jim Harbaugh will probably tell you the same thing. So, I mean, there's probably part of it that's you're going to have to ride it out, but I get the frustration. I get being upset, and I don't think my point here in the long rant is I don't think anybody should feel guilty about being upset or being frustrated. And I think I hear a lot of people earlier this year that had this, man, I'm going to feel guilty if I'm upset, if I lose it or something like that. I mean, I think that's fair. You've been asked to wait so many times, and at some point somebody's got to deliver. And it's fair to be upset. It's fair to be frustrated. It's fair to question people. Jim Harbaugh is not an unquestioned coach. It's fair to question things that he does. He's not perfect all the time. I think that's fair. That's natural. And that's normal. And if that's what you're doing, then that's fine. I mean, that's how I look at it, and we'll see how they handle it.
On our game day segment this week has been Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from the Detroit Free Press. As always, Nick, great stuff. Good to have you on the show, and we look forward to our next visit.
All right, Mike, sounds good.
Quick Hits is next as we wrap it up here on our game day show on the Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. On Quick Hits today, no injury updates were provided at Jim's presser on Monday or on his radio show Monday night. We'll check again on Thursday and see if there's anything new. At his Monday presser, Jim said he thought John O'Korn played well on Saturday, saying he had no turnovers, no sacks, and was 100% in the red zone. O'Korn was made available to the media on Monday and said he has to pick it up on Saturday. He realizes he missed open receivers against IU and said he has to take care of the ball and find those open receivers. Jim said it's going to take a team effort to stop Saquon Barkley on Saturday night. Looking back at last week's game, he said he didn't think Lavert Hill interfered on the penalty he was called for Saturday. He mentioned the great play of linebackers McCray and Bush and said Maurice Hurst and Rashawn Gary were linemen of the week. On his Monday radio show, Jim had quite a bit to say about the 16 penalties called against Michigan. He said many of them, though, were valid, false starts, offsides, etc. But the two special team penalties he referred to as phantom calls. Jim said, we just can't have all of those penalties, though. Just cannot have it.
Thanks again to Michigan beat writer Nick Baumgardner from the Detroit Free Press for being our guest today. On Thursday's Visitors Show, we welcome the return of Penn State radio play-by-play voice Steve Jones, so make sure you join us for that. If you get the show from iTunes, please take a minute to comment or rate the program. Our free show app is available from the iTunes and Google Play stores, and you can listen every week on TuneIn, iHeart, Stitcher, and Wolverine Sports Radio. That will do it for our game day edition of the Michigan Man this week. Don't forget to join us on Thursday as Penn State radio voice Steve Jones stops by for a visit to preview Saturday night's big game. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until then, have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Take care, and as always, go Blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!